War does not begin with swords. It begins with signatures. Far to the south, beneath golden chandeliers and carved marble ceilings, rulers who once distrusted one another now sat at the same table. Not because they respected each other, because they feared the same thing. Valoria. Maps were spread across polished stone. The northern mountains, once ignored, were now redrawn with lines of concern. Aranthor's Lord Kael'thorn stood at the head of the chamber, voice calm but sharp. Individually, he said, we tolerate inconvenience. Collectively, we eliminate threats. The Dominion of Kareth sent its Iron General, a man known for crushing border rebellions without negotiation. Smaller states, eager to prove loyalty or earn favor, pledged troops and coin. They justified it as maintaining order. But in truth, they were protecting pride. A mountain-born power had humiliated Aranthor's soldiers. It had resisted assassination. It had expanded without permission. It had dared to exist, and existence without approval is rebellion in the eyes of kings. By the end of the night, the pact was sealed. 3 major kingdoms, several minor states, 1 coalition army, 5,000 infantry, 700 heavy cavalry, siege engineers with reinforced towers, supply caravans stretching miles. This was not a warning strike. It was extermination. In the mountains, the air felt heavier, days before the first scout confirmed movement. Aelor stood at the eastern watchtower at dawn when the messenger arrived, breath visible in the cold. They march in formation, the scout reported. Multiple banners, organized supply lines, not a raid, not a punitive expedition, a campaign. The words settled over Valoria like incoming storm clouds. The valley had grown stronger since the assassination attempt. Stone walls reinforced key entries, archery towers completed, outer settlements fortified. But against thousands, the difference between survival and extinction now rested on strategy. The council gathered immediately. Some faces showed fear, others anger, a few excitement. This was the moment every rising power faces, to retreat into defense, or to redefine the battlefield entirely. They outnumber us 5 to 1, one commander said quietly. Then we do not fight 5 to 1, Aelor replied. He walked toward the central map, a carved wooden layout of the surrounding terrain. These mountains are not obstacles, he said. They are weapons. He began assigning positions not based on strength, but on terrain advantage. Narrow passes would funnel heavy infantry into kill corridors. False supply trails would mislead cavalry into dead-end ridges. Hidden grain stores would allow Valoria to endure longer than the coalition expected. He did not raise his voice. He did not show urgency. That calm steadied the room. War is often won before the first blade is drawn. Meanwhile, far from both armies, Queen Seraphine observed events from Elindra's silver balcony. She had declined
Kael'thorn's invitation to join the coalition. Publicly, she claimed neutrality. Privately, she sent a sealed letter north. It arrived at Valoria under quiet escort. Inside were precise details. Coalition supply routes, tensions between Aranthor and Kareth commanders, projected marching timelines. No soldiers, no open alliance, but information. Information is often worth more than steel. Aelor read the letter twice. Seraphine was playing a long game. If Valoria survived, she would have invested wisely. If it fell, she had not risked her army. Smart, calculated, he respected it, and used it. Days later, the coalition banners appeared at the base of the lower mountain passes. The sight alone was meant to intimidate. Drums echoed against stone cliffs. Armor reflected cold sunlight. Siege wagons creaked forward in disciplined lines. They expected resistance at the valley entrance. Instead, they found abandonment. Empty watch posts, faint retreat tracks, no defenders in sight. Kael'thorn's generals interpreted it as fear. They advanced confidently. That confidence would cost them. High above, concealed along cliff ridges, Valorian scouts tracked their every movement. They waited. Patience is a weapon more powerful than numbers. When the front of the coalition column entered, a narrow stone corridor flanked by sheer cliffs. Aelor gave a single signal. Ropes were cut. Massive boulders rolled from hidden ledges, crashing into tightly packed infantry. Panic rippled through the formation. Before they could reorganize, arrows rained down from unseen archers positioned high beyond counter range. Then silence. Valorian units vanished before retaliation. The coalition had suffered damage, not catastrophic but humiliating. More importantly, they now realized this would not be a simple march. It would be a grind, and grinding erodes morale. Yet the coalition was not foolish. Their commanders adjusted. They split forces into multiple, advancing columns to reduce vulnerability in narrow terrain. This was dangerous. It forced Valoria to spread thinner. Aelor studied updated reports carefully. This was no longer about harassment. It was about control of tempo. If the coalition fully surrounded the mountains, Valoria would be trapped. So Aelor considered something bold. Not defense. Decapitation. Strike at leadership. Disrupt coordination. Create mistrust between coalition generals. If their command structure fractured, the army's numerical advantage would lose cohesion. That night, beneath gathering storm clouds, Aelor selected a small unit of elite fighters. Not the strongest, the most disciplined. They would move through an abandoned ridge, path known only to shepherds and early scouts. Risky, but war rarely rewards caution alone. Before departure, Aelor addressed them quietly. If we remain only defenders, we fight on their terms. Tonight we remind them this is our ground. They moved into darkness as thunder rolled faintly across distant peaks. Below, the
Coalition command camp flickered with hundreds of torches. From above, it looked powerful, organized, unstoppable. But even great armies rely on sleep, and sleep creates openings. As Aelor's unit descended toward the edge of the command perimeter, he felt the shift again. The same instinct he felt before the assassination attempt. Something unexpected waited. He did not turn back. Because leaders who hesitate at the edge of history rarely shape it. Steel would speak next, and the mountains would decide who listened. The storm rolled over the mountains like a living thing. Thunder growled between peaks as Aelor and his selected unit descended the hidden ridge path. Rain began to fall, light at first, then steady, turning loose gravel into slick danger. Below them stretched the coalition command camp. Hundreds of torches flickered in disciplined rows. Large command tents stood at the center, reinforced with iron stakes and guarded by rotating patrols. War banners snapped violently in the rising wind, Aranthor's crimson lion, Kareth's black iron crest, and the sigils of lesser states seeking favor through blood. It looked impenetrable. But every structure has rhythm, and rhythm can be broken. Aelor observed carefully before giving signals. Patrol timing, blind spots during thunder bursts, supply wagons creating shadow pockets between torch lines. They moved when lightning struck. Light hides movement as much as darkness does. The outer guards fell silently. No dramatic duels, no wasted motion, precision, controlled breathing, quick withdrawals into shadow. They were not there for glory. They were there for fracture. As they approached the central command tent, Aelor noticed something unusual. Too few guards. Either arrogance or a trap. He did not slow. Inside the command circle, voices could be heard arguing. Coalition generals debated strategy, disagreements, about splitting forces further, about supply vulnerabilities, about who would claim victory if Valoria fell. Even united armies have cracks. Aelor signaled half his unit to circle left and create controlled disruption, cut tether lines, ignite small supply carts, create confusion without full alarm. Moments later, flames rose at the edge of camp. Shouts erupted. Guards broke formation to respond. And in that fracture, Aelor entered the central tent. Inside were maps, wine, scattered strategy tokens, but no generals. Instead, a single figure stood waiting, tall, still, armored in dark steel unlike any banner outside. A smooth iron mask concealed his face entirely, etched with faint silver markings that caught the lantern light. "You are earlier than expected," the masked man said calmly. His voice was neither loud nor aggressive. It was measured. Aelor did not lower his blade. "You knew we would come." "Of course," the masked figure replied. "You think like a commander, not a defender." Outside, chaos grew louder, but inside the tent, silence thickened. "Who are you?" Aelor asked. "The
masked warrior tilted his head slightly. "A student of power." Then he drew his sword. The sound of steel leaving its sheath felt deliberate, almost ceremonial. This was no ordinary commander. Their blades met without warning. The first exchange told Aller everything he needed to know. The masked warrior was faster than Varine, stronger, more controlled. He fought not with brute aggression, but predictive precision, anticipating shifts in weight, countering before attacks fully formed. They circled within the narrow tent space, lantern shadows flickering violently as thunder cracked outside. Aller adjusted quickly, shifting from direct offense to layered feints. He tested reactions, probed defense lines. The masked warrior adapted instantly. "You build well," the man said between strikes. "You inspire loyalty." Steel collided again. "But you do not yet understand scale." Aller forced distance briefly, knocking over a lantern. Flames licked across the tent fabric. Outside, coalition soldiers rushed inward, drawn by smoke. Time was narrowing. "You are not here to protect them," Aller said quietly. "You are here to measure me." A pause. A slight shift in stance. "Correct." The masked warrior pressed forward suddenly, pushing Aller back with calculated pressure. Their blades locked close, face to mask. "Coalitions are temporary," the man continued. "Crowns are fragile. But empires are built by those willing to break systems." Lightning illuminated the mask fully. There was no insignia, no allegiance. This man did not fight for Aranther or Kareth. He fought for something else. Aller twisted free and drove forward with a strike aimed to disarm. The masked warrior blocked, but the force pushed him back half a step. The first step he had conceded. Outside, Valorian fighters signaled retreat. The distraction had worked. Fires spread through outer supply lines. Command structure fractured. Generals were being forced to reposition under confusion. The mission objective was achieved. Aller stepped back deliberately. "This war is not yours," he said. The masked warrior lowered his blade slightly. "No," he replied. "It is yours." Then, without warning, he extinguished the central lantern with a swift motion. Darkness swallowed the tent. By the time Aller cut through the fabric and stepped into rain and chaos, the masked warrior was gone, vanished, as if he had never intended to kill, only to observe. Valorian fighters regrouped along the ridge as flames and shouting spread through coalition ranks. Supplies burned, trust fractured. Commanders blamed one another for security failure. The coalition would not collapse overnight. But doubt had been planted, and doubt spreads faster than fire. From a distant rise, Aller looked back at the disrupted camp. They had not destroyed the army, but they had shaken its certainty. And certainty is the spine of large forces. Without it, numbers lose confidence. Beside him, one of his commanders asked quietly,
"Who was that man?" Ela kept his eyes on the stormlit horizon. "Not a soldier," he said. "Not a king." Something colder settled in his voice. "A builder." Somewhere beyond banners and coalitions, someone else was studying the rise of Valoria. Not to stop it, but to see if it was worthy. The mountains had become a battlefield, but the true game was larger than armies. And it had just begun. The fires inside the coalition camp did more damage than burned supplies. They burned confidence. By dawn, tension spread faster than strategy. Aranther's commanders blamed Kareth for weak perimeter defense. Kareth accused Aranther of underestimating the mountains. Minor states grew nervous, questioning whether they had aligned with strength or pride. 5,000 soldiers remained, but unity had cracked. And Ela understood something most rulers did not. Large armies do not fall from defeat alone. They fall from doubt. The coalition regrouped quickly, pushing deeper into the mountain passes with heavier caution. Scouts advanced in wider arcs. Cavalry avoided narrow corridors. Siege towers were repositioned for elevation control. They adapted. So did Valoria. Instead of repeating ambush patterns, Ela shifted tactics entirely. He ordered controlled silence. No attacks for 2 days. No visible patrols. No harassment. Just emptiness. The coalition advanced slowly into quiet territory. expecting another trap behind every shadow. None came. Sleep became restless. Food distribution became tense. Whispers began spreading among soldiers. Why don't they fight us directly? What are they waiting for? Fear of the unseen is stronger than fear of the visible. On the third night, the storm returned. Heavy winds. Low visibility. Cold rain slashing across armor. That was when Valoria struck again. Not from cliffs. From within. Small, fast units targeted communication runners between coalition divisions. Signal fires were disrupted. Horn codes were mimicked and altered. Confusion multiplied. One division believed retreat was ordered. Another believed advance had been commanded. By the time commanders realized signals were compromised, coordination had fractured. Ela had never intended to destroy 5,000 soldiers head-on. He intended to make them distrust their own structure. And it worked. Lord Calthorn rode to the forward command ridge at sunrise to assess the damage personally. What he saw unsettled him. Fatigued infantry. Cavalry unwilling to push through narrow fog-covered paths. Allied generals arguing over strategic missteps. And in the distance, the crimson banner of Valoria standing unshaken atop a fortified ridge. Small, but visible. Unbroken. Calthorn understood something dangerous in that moment. Valoria was not trying to win through force. It was proving it could not be erased. And once an idea proves it cannot be erased, it becomes permanent. Meanwhile, far beyond the battlefield, the masked warrior observed from a high cliff overlooking both
armies. He had not returned to the coalition command. He did not need to. He had seen enough. Aelor had chosen unpredictability over pride, strategy over emotion, restraint over reckless glory. Interesting. Very interesting. This one builds differently, the masked warrior murmured. The coalition's final attempt came at midday. A full organized push toward the main valley entrance. Siege units advanced. Infantry tightened ranks. Drums pounded to restore morale. For the first time, Valoria stood visibly at the gates. Shield lines formed. Archers prepared. Aelor stood at the center beneath the crimson banner. The clash was thunderous. Steel against steel. Shield against hammer. But unlike earlier skirmishes, this was controlled. Valoria did not chase. Did not overextend. Every push by coalition forces met calculated resistance. Every breach attempt closed within seconds. After hours of grinding effort, the coalition realized something crushing. They were not advancing. They were exhausting themselves. Supplies had thinned from sabotage. Morale had weakened from doubt. Coordination had suffered from infiltration. Calthorn made a decision no proud ruler wishes to make. He ordered strategic withdrawal, not defeat, not surrender, but withdrawal. The banners slowly turned south. 5,000 had entered the mountains with certainty. They left with caution. Valoria did not pursue. It watched. It endured. And that endurance was louder than victory cries. As the last coalition units disappeared beyond the lower ridges, the valley grew silent once more. Not the silence of fear, the silence of realization. Valoria had survived a united campaign of crowns. Against greater numbers, against greater resources. Through discipline, through strategy, through identity. Aelor stood alone at the watchtower as evening fell. This war had not ended the threat. It had elevated it. Now kingdoms would not see Valoria as rebellion. They would see it as emerging power, and emerging powers attract larger enemies. Behind him, the crimson banner moved steadily in the mountain wind. Not torn, not lowered. Steady. One of his commanders approached quietly. "We drove them back," Aelor nodded slightly. "Yes," but his eyes remained fixed on the horizon. "They will return." He welcomed the truth, because each return would only strengthen what Valoria was becoming. Far away in shadow, the masked warrior turned and vanished into the northern wilds. He would return, not as an assassin, not as a coalition tool, but as something far more significant. The game was expanding, and Valoria had just stepped onto the larger board. Aelor turned toward his people, voice steady but stronger than before. "They united to break us, and failed. This is no longer survival. This is destiny." Then look directly into the camera and say, "If you stand with strength, If you believe empires are built, not inherited, then subscribe and join the Valorian Empire.